Welcome to 2026. Welcome to Elephants in the Boardroom, a brand new year and a brand new season. My name is Graeme Codrington, and as always, I'm with my business partner, Dean van Leeuwen. Dean, we're recording this. Let's take people behind the scenes. We're recording this before we go on Christmas break. I was going to say, how was your New Year's Day? But you'd just be making it up. This is a little bit behind the scenes for everybody else. We probably, as you're listening to this, we are already on holiday. But Dean, quickly, how was 2025 for you, and what are you excited about for 2026?
Wow, the honest answer, Graham, it's been a challenging year. I've no doubt about that. Challenging, I think, on personal levels. Dear friend of ours passed away. It's also been challenging on a business. I think there have been a number of disruptions in the world this year, and I think most of us have felt them. But to be honest, I'm really excited about 2026 and what it holds. The research that we've been doing this year clearly shows that we're moving through a very sharp transformation. The world is, and I think that for me, the grey elephants are really coming to life. I'm really excited about what I see and how they're becoming it's becoming a living model. As we talk about and research these grey elephants, we're seeing them act out and play out in the world around us. And for me, that's really exciting. So 2026, I think we're going to see a continued trend of the world really shifting and changing, but incredible opportunities. And I'm really excited to share some of the thinking and the models that we've been developing in 2025 to help our leaders navigate through these the kind of banny world that we talk about, this brittle, anxious, non-linear, incomprehensible world that we're living in. So I'm really excited about 2026. How about you, Graham?
Yeah, look, in our family, 2025 was a year of tragedy, personally, and so that sort of is a dark cloud over the year for me. But if I reflect on it for the sake of the podcast, so many people that I've spoken to, whether they are senior leaders in business or government, or just if I can call them that, just your average worker, somebody who's just got a job or wishes they had a better job, or, just desperately trying to do the best they can do for themselves and their families. I think I just heard a common theme that people had it tough. And whether it was a specific issue that made it tough, and tragedies can happen to anyone, anywhere, or whether it was just, I think generally people are feeling that the world, it's hard at the moment. It's hard to do the things. To use the language of our elephants in the boardroom, there's a big squeeze on, and everything feels like it's squeezed. And that's our finances with inflation, and it's our supply chains with logistics disruptions, and it's our sense of safety, whether that's global wars or whether it's just unrest and depending on the country you're in, the fact that now the police can kick your front door in at any stage, and I just whether it's, as I say, sort of global level or just down to personal level, I think people are realizing that we can't just grit our teeth and hope to get through this, right? This isn't now just something where, we're going through a tough time, it'll be over soon. And that then, bizarrely, having sort of started thinking that way, I'm not actually downbeat. I'm actually quite excited for the year ahead, because I do sense that whether it's in politics or in business or even in the personal lives of people in my network and community, I'm sensing people almost saying, you know what, we've got to do something now. We can't just let this thing, whatever this thing is, we can't just let this thing keep going and hope. We're now going to have to get involved. We're going to have to be proactive. We're going to have to be deliberate and conscious. And I think that really is, if nothing else, the message of this podcast, that it isn't about trying to identify things nobody's ever thought of before, or look in the dark shadows to see things nobody else can see. Everything we need to know about what's changing in the world is standing right in front of us. The lights are on. The question is, what are you actually going to do? And I think 2026 will belong to those people, those businesses, those countries that are deliberate, conscious, decisive. And I don't even think it matters that much whether it's the best or suboptimal decision. It's just about choices and action. And I'm excited to see what happens, because I don't think there's a roadmap for the year. There's just an invitation to get stuff done.
Yeah, Graham, I really like that sentiment and the way you've kind of packaged that. It's, as we say, we're big believers that the best way to predict the future is to create it. And for listeners who are perhaps new to elephants in the boardroom, gray elephants are highly probable, high impact, yet largely ignored forces of progress. And they offer a huge opportunity. Yes, you can sort of hunker down and try and sort of live out the storm. But as Ayrton Senna said, you can't overtake 15 cars in sunny weather, but you can when it's raining. This is a moment to grab the opportunities out there and shape and create the future. Yeah, I think 2026, I agree with you. I think it's going to be a big, big year when people stop sort of thinking, wow, this is a crazy world, but actually start saying, what are we going to do about it? What's the future we want to create?
So at Elephants in the Boardroom, we don't make predictions. Nobody can predict the future, and we don't claim to be able to do that. But it is January. It is the start of a new year. We do have to put our money where our mouth is sometimes, at least, Ian. So I don't know what we're going to call this episode or call these things we're about to say, because we're not going to predict the future, but we do think that there are some things that are likely to happen in 2026 that will bring opportunities if they do happen. And they are also so close to being realities that if you choose to kind of chase them, you can bring them into reality yourself. So with all of that hedging, here are our predictions for 2026. And Dean, I'm going to hand the microphone to you first. What do you think we should be keeping our eyes on? This is not a comprehensive summary of everything we think will happen in the year. This is what elephants do you think are slightly restless and deserve a closer investigation and examination in January 2026. Dean, over to you.
So, Graeme, I've been using our grey elephant radar to kind of identify some of the weak signals that suggest that disruptions or change or something that's coming along. And I think I've found an absolute doozy. It's quite unusual, so I'm going to throw this into the mix. And it's called the enhanced games. And I think it's one of the most interesting weak signals out there at the moment. So for those of you who haven't heard about the enhanced games, it's a proposed, it's going to happen, multi-sport event. It's been founded by the Australian businessman Aaron D'Souza, and he wants to allow athletes to use performance-enhancing substances, without drug tests. And his pitch is that it's going to be a global annual competition that celebrates human potential through safe, transparent enhancements. He's promising fair play, a level playing field, because all of the athletes will be on performance enhancements. Record pay. I'll tell you a bit later about how much these athletes stand to earn out of this. And he says unmatched athletic care. So his argument, I guess, is simple, all right? He says athletes should be free to do what they want with their own body. He says that the IOC, or the Olympic Committee, is corrupt for exploiting them while pretending the sport is clean. He's certainly coming out punching, I think. The first competition is due in May 2026 in Las Vegas, and it's going to involve several former Olympic champions, track athletes, and weightlifters. I went to the Enhanced Games website, and this is where it really gets interesting. They talk openly about transforming human potential into superhumanity. All right. Their vision, their organizational vision reads, to create the definitive scientific, cultural, and sporting movement that safely evolves mankind into a new superhumanity. I've got a video I want to share with you because I think it will really just bring this to life.
On Memorial Day weekend 2026, the world of sport will change forever. The Enhanced Games, a new era where sport meets spectacle, where records fall and traditions are rewritten. The world's best athletes, fully unleashed and powered by science, pursuing their full human potential in a safe and medically supervised environment to become faster and stronger than ever before. Track, swimming, and weightlifting, enhanced versus natural, all in one night, with a record $25 million in prize money on the line. Staged on the Las Vegas Strip and built for the record books, the entertainment capital of the world awaits its next icon, including an enhanced fan experience where every attendee is a VIP. But not just in person. Experience the Enhanced Games from anywhere in the world with a new way to witness athletic greatness. Enhanced is taking over one of the biggest weekends of the year to showcase to you what our true human potential is.
That's the definition of enhanced, baby, right there.
This isn't just sport. This isn't just athletes. It's a revolution, and you can be a part of it. Together, we are enhanced.
I'd pay to watch that. I'm a huge sports fan, and some sporting codes are obviously defined by things like weight and height and age and so on. I don't see why you shouldn't define a sporting event by how much you're prepared to enhance yourself, whether that's chemically or robotically and so on. Obviously, there's ethics and safety and everything else involved in the conversation, but the concept, sure, why not? See how far we can push ourselves, right?
I think it's going to be huge. And I think the timing is interesting. You know, if you look at how the world is changing, we talk about the sharp transformation. We talk about a world that's going to look fundamentally different tomorrow than what it does today. This is one of those defining events, which is capturing that theme, that change that we are seeing in the world. You know, we think about what's normal. We've accepted a normal way of sporting events. You know, we don't, you know, it's a clean sport, it's anti-doping, it's humanity or athletes, you know, competing against each other one-on-one and on a fair playing ground. But maybe that's not the new normal. Maybe the new normal with AI and tech and biomedicine and so on, maybe this idea about a new level of performance with sort of superhuman level, it kind of taps into the popular psyche that's emerging. I think it's going to be huge. It's more than just a publicity stunt. I think this could be the start of a new sporting movement.
I think so. I think it's worth watching because, as you say, it's more than just what it is, right? Somebody listening to us might not be interested in sport or might think that this crosses a line somewhere. But that's really what the Grey Elephant's radar asks you to do, is to not stop at whatever lines you think we should stop at. That doesn't mean we believe anybody should do anything. There are legal and ethical and moral lines that we need to consider. But in our strategic imagination, we need to bring a challenger mindset, which challenges ourselves to say, are we just accepting where those lines are based on previous or outdated technologies, previous or outdated agreements about what is acceptable and normal, and previous and outdated views on competition? And so those questions can apply to any industry, anywhere. What are other people in your industry prepared to do? Are the lines of legal, moral, ethical, safe correctly drawn? Can they be redrawn? And can we change the rules of competition? I think those are fantastic questions.
Yeah, they're brilliant. And this sits squarely in our societal fractures, grey elephant. It's all about the rules for engagement, the rules for success and failure, institutional rules, and these are brittle. They are breaking, and they are being rewritten. For most of modern sports, I think we've largely accepted that doping is cheating, that natural performance is ideal, and fairness is defined by the absence of chemical enhancements. I mean, Graeme, I'm very passionate about cycling, and about 10 years ago, you had the Lance Armstrong scandal about performance enhancement drugs. But the Tour de France is an event which, I think the organizers of that event, have created a sporting entertainment, show that it's incredibly hard to do without performance enhancements. And I think what we're seeing is that there's now this new kind of parallel moral universe that's starting to emerge. We're starting to say, well, maybe enhancements isn't about cheating. Isn't this just a natural evolution of society and technology merging into one? It's kind of like humanity being married with tech, IA, medical, let's read drug advancements. We're living in a new world where rules for what used to be normal in sports, in business, are being challenged. They are being rewritten. So yeah, I think it's an amazing signal for business leaders. There's the moral, there's the ethical debate, and I think that's going to rage. You're seeing the IOC and WADA, the World Anti-Drug Administration, coming out really hard against this. But there's a powerful logic behind it. This is my body, and I should be able to choose and do what I want with it. So we're moving from paternalism, we ban this to protect you, to autonomy. Inform me, then let me decide what I should do. Yeah, I think it shows some wonderful sort of weak signals that are going to have a powerful impact to driving change in our world.
Absolutely. Dean, we invited people to contribute to this episode, and we've had a few contributions. I will mention people only by their first name, so they know they got the mention, but we forgot, to be honest, to ask them full GDPR permission. So Lee talked about the rise of anti-technology. And I think that this is what happens with a weak signal like the enhanced games. You're going to have some people who say, this is amazing, all in, let's go for it. Then you're going to have other people going to the reaction on the other side, which is to say, no, we don't want any of this at all. And both of these things are true. So looking for a weak signal, again, this is why it's not a prediction. We're not saying, by the next Olympics, everybody's going to be able to use drugs. What we are saying is there is a weak signal that is causing structural change in a key industry or part of society. And then the next question after that is, how will people respond? There will always be people who gung-ho go for it, and always be people who absolutely anti. History tells us what ends up happening is somewhere in between those two things happening. But I think Lee is spot on that part of the reaction to too much technology, and too much technology could be augmented athletes and robotic assisted Olympics and so on. Part of that will be almost an anti-technology pushback. And that can be, again, a threat to your company if you're a tech-driven company, or if technology is key to your future. But it could also be an opportunity as well. You can see companies that recognize that it is bionic when the technology makes sense, and human when the technology doesn't. And I don't think it's an either or, I think it's a both and.
I agree with you, and I think that's a great question from Lee. For me, I think, it doesn't actually matter whether the enhanced game succeeds commercially or not. I don't think that's the point here. I think as a weak signal, what it's telling us is that shared norms are weakening. They're being challenged, what we think is right or wrong. Autonomy is trumping paternalism. I think we're seeing human enhancements, this idea of becoming bionic. Superhumanity. It's moving from taboo to the normal. And that's going to have big implications for business models, for supply chains. As supply chains, as you start to perhaps see a parallel development alongside what normal businesses do and then what new bionic businesses do. And so I think it's going to be it's fascinating. Yeah, I'd park this one firmly in societal fractures with a strong link to intelligent advances. I think AI is having a big role in this enhancement. It's not just drugs. It's AI, it's robotics, it's automation. I think as a social experiment, the enhanced games is fascinating, and I'm really interested in watching this, what it has on the impact it has on the periphery, how it shapes people's mental, their mind, their worldviews about what's happening around us. I think that it's going to have a bigger impact than just sporting. So yeah, that's a big weak signal that I've identified. But let me move on to I've got two others that I've been looking at. The next one is probably a little bit more boring than the enhanced gains, but I think it's going to have a real impact to people's kind of pockets and wealth. And that's the whole move of, climate change, global warming, and insurance. Okay, so you can't get anything more sort of dull than insurance sports, but I want to go there because what's happening and quietly happening in the background is that insurers are steadily withdrawing from high-risk regions, so coasts, fire zones, floodplains, or they're hiking premiums to such an extent that they become unaffordable. And this is going to create uninsurability. It's going to destabilize the housing market. It's going to stress people out. This is not hypothetical. It's actually already happening. Mortgage markets are quietly assuming this insurability. And I think if large regions become effectively uninsurable, then what's going to happen is we're going to see a collapse in the property values in those areas. We're going to see local tax being eroded for schools, for services. We're going to see migration from these uninsurable areas to climate safer cities. So it's all going to have this knock-on effect, and I think it's under discussed because most media attention is around storms, it's around heat waves. It's not about the financial plumbing, the insurance, the mortgages, the finance, and local governments are staying away from it. They're not talking about it because it's potentially disruptive for them. So yeah, that's my second sort of weak signal. Is this impact, the impact of climate change and how it impacts our wallets.
Absolutely. You can have all the culture war debates and discussions you want to around whether climate change is happening or not. I mean, it is happening. That debate you shouldn't really be having. But the debate might be what's causing it? How do we fix it? What do we do next? What laws should we put in place? I understand there are debates to be had. But the insurance companies don't care about your feelings and they don't care about your debates. If they decide that the risk is too high and the insurance is not worth it, we could end up with homes and factories and infrastructures that are uninsurable for climate-related damage. And that will change everything for regardless of the science and regardless of your beliefs and feelings. And so absolutely keep your eye on the reinsurance market in particular. That's where it will start, but it will flow down. And in 2026, if you are renewing any insurance for infrastructure, best you read it and make sure that there are no exclusions that take you by surprise, because that's going to start happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And to our Achilles International listeners, this has a huge impact on supply chains. It has a huge impact on risk. So you need to be, this one definitely needs to be on your radar. I think it's an incredibly restless elephant. It's not one that's sort of sitting quietly in the corner. This one is becoming really restless. It's starting to have impact, but it's also easy to overlook. So keep your eye on this one and also look for the opportunities. What are the opportunities that you could identify? New supply chains, and perhaps even potential product solutions here. I'm a big believer in that. We're going to have to learn to live with climate change. We aren't going to stop this march. It's going to hit. It's going to go past 1.5 degrees centigrade. It's going to possibly go flying past 2 degrees. we need to start coming up with solutions around how we live with global warming. And there are opportunities there for people who are in the supply chain and risk industries. So my last one, Graeme, I think this is quite a big one, and this one has worried me for a long time, but I think it's becoming more and more restless as a grey elephant, and it's superbugs and ineffective antibiotics. And it's quietly happening in the background. And I came across a few stats recently that already superbugs, bacterial antimicrobial resistance is already causing at least 1 million deaths a year. Now that's up there with car accidents. It's rising rapidly. It could be tens of millions of people within the next 2 decades. Why is this shaping 2026? And I think, firstly, it's not the far future. It's already happening. It's quietly happening. It's having an impact on healthcare costs, on hospital stays. People are staying longer in hospital or not going at all to hospital because they're worried about catching these super bugs in hospital. We're going to start seeing an increase in mortality from routine procedures like going to the dentist, and you suddenly find out that antibiotics aren't working and so on. And I think the big problem here, if you're trying to find a solution for this, is that investors look at antibiotics and it's not sexy, it's not new, it's not a new drug, it's not a high return drug. And so there's no natural attraction for capital and investment into finding a solution for this. And I think that's a really big problem here. And that's why it's largely being ignored. It's slow, it's technical, it's unsexy. Yeah, so it's getting less attention, but it's huge. It's a massive grey elephant. It's going to have a huge impact on society, and we need to be talking about it. We need to have a lot more conversations about what this means. We need to get governments behind the agenda here. We need to be getting companies, thinking what are the options? What are the commercial options that can help, really kickstart this?
Yeah, it does freak me out that what we read in history books at the moment, which is that people died of let's call it the silliest things in the past, because we just have lived our whole lives in a world where medicine is pretty good and can deal with most things that happen. But if antibiotics and antimicrobials stop working, then flu, just the annual flu, becomes a deadly disease again, and many other things. You cut yourself and it gets infected, and you can't, the antibiotic cream doesn't work. This again changes life on Earth. So it is again one of those elephants. It's sitting there. There's going to be no surprise if we start to see upticks in diseases that we thought we had dealt with, and in medical issues we thought we had dealt with. But of course you can see both threat and opportunity there. Having talked about medical stuff, let's bring in one more of our listeners' contributions. Philippa left us a voice note actually, and gave a number of things, but one of the things she is most concerned about is about mental health and mental well-being, especially of young people who are using AI companions. And this is something, Dean, you and I saw at the Dubai Futures Forum last year. This was one of the big themes that the Dubai Futures team are looking at, that AI becomes your best friend. That was how they framed it as a theme for the year. But that theme, it has a little bit of a dark edge to it when your best friend now becomes one of these AI companions, and there is no longer control from parents or teachers or medical professionals in the system, but we're rather relying on something which about 20% of the time hallucinates and gives you very bad information, which some people might be arguing, that's my group of friends anyway. Maybe in every group of friends there's one crazy person anyway, and so ChatGPT is that person now. But Philippa, I think that's also a big shout for us to be thinking about as part of an overall concern around global health and well-being. So Dean, thank you. That's your list. My list is still to come, but let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive into the second half of our predictions for 2026. Welcome back. Let us continue then. Dean and I are talking about what we see coming, and Dean, I've got four fairly quick ones in the spirit of the elephants in the boardroom. These are things that people are aware of. They've been coming for a while, but our suggestion is that 2026 is going to be a year where you see some significant shift taking place, and therefore there's this opportune moment, right? And we like to use the label a kairos moment, a moment which is waiting for you. If you're ready, the opportunity is there, you take advantage, done. If you miss it, it's gone. And the competition is out of sight. So my first one on my list is just cybersecurity generally. It's a constant theme, has been a constant theme for 30 years in the world, but in particular, the ability or lack of ability of us to be able to identify what's an AI fake. And here I'm talking not just now pictures, but I'm talking videos, I'm talking audio. Somebody phones you and says, hey, this is your mother. And you've got a voice marker in your head. Can you be sure? Right? And for me, the weak signal here is not the technology, not this information. Everybody knows this is here. The weak signal is that I don't think we have started yet to have the conversations about this being the new reality. That it's not, can we trust? The answer is no, you can't. That was decided in 2025. 2026 now is, how do we live in that world? And that's the world in which you can't trust that the person who rings your doorbell to deliver a package is who they say they are. That you can't trust when somebody phones you that it is who you think it is. And that can, at one level, I'm almost deflated even saying that, because it just feels like, oh my word, I don't want to live in that world. Well, sorry, you do. You live in that world. The question then, and this is the point of this podcast, is to say, get over your cognitive dissonance of imagining, I don't like this world, and say, well, what do you do about it? And where might the opportunities therefore be to kind of overcome AI fake-driven cybersecurity issues? So that's my big first week trend.
That's really interesting, Graeme. Yesterday I was running a workshop with a client, and one of the ladies in the group actually said to me that she had a conversation with a banking AI agent, a verbal voice conversation over the phone. And she said it lasted for about 10 minutes before she realized she was talking to a chatbot. And the only reason she said she clocked it was because she said, are you a real person? And at that point they said, would you like to speak to a colleague? But she said she had no clue. Yeah, and I think that's the world we're living in. And in 2026, it's just going to be compounded. We are increasingly going to be unable to tell the difference between whether we're talking to an AI agent or a real person. And on one level, I think as long as the service is efficient and your problem gets dealt with, does it matter? On the other level, you have to think about, what does that mean? Back to your story about the kind of AI being your best friend. What does it mean on that level? So it's happening, it's here, and it's going to be increasingly a part of our normal world.
Absolutely. And here we can bring in, again, two more voices from listeners to the podcast. First of all, Jude, who commented that the new superpower in the world surely is going to be human connection. And I think that links in with what you've just said, Dean, that yes, if I've got a question for a company, let's say I'd ordered something, it hasn't been delivered, I want to know where's my delivery, when can I expect it? I'm happy to speak to a computer, because I'm sure actually the computer knows more than the people in that system. So build a very good AI-driven natural language front end automated system, and I know what I'm speaking to, and I know that is going to solve my problem if it does. But what happens if it can't? What happens if you reach the point where, where you want to say, please, can I speak to the manager? That question is not simply about, I want to speak to a human. It's, I want to speak to somebody who can override the ridiculous system I currently feel trapped in. And I want human intelligence now, not just machine algorithm. And I think that we've got to go a step beyond, can I speak to the manager, to say, hey, let's have a human connection here. And I think in some industries and in some environments, human connection will be a superpower.
Yeah. And that raises a point around intelligence and consciousness, because, and that was something that also was raised at the Dubai Future Forum, which I thought was fascinating. Many of these AI bots will have superior levels of intelligence, or be able to access records and data incredibly quickly and come across as hugely intelligent, but they lack the consciousness. They lack that ability to feel, have empathy, to relate. And that's the human advantage. And I think that's what Jude's talking about around the human connection. So if you're a bank, you're working in supply chains, you use AI to build up that intelligence, you use human to bring in that consciousness level, your creativity, your empathy, your collaboration, and collectively together, that becomes very, very powerful. That, I think, is almost one of these superhuman sort of advancements that we're going to see. But at the moment, it's all around the intelligence side. It's not around the consciousness side.
So, top tip for a question that you can take to your team in January 2026 as you're kind of setting up. I think it's a two-part question. The first is, where can we use technologies, including AI, etc., to build efficiencies and productivity into our system? I bet you've already been having that conversation, and I bet your team's got lots of good answers for that. But part two of the question, and this is our gift to you as Tomorrow Today, is where would the human touch be a competitive advantage in our business? And I bet you that's going to be a tougher question to answer, because most of our businesses are set up for efficiency, productivity, and cost cutting. And maybe there's an opportunity in your industry to do something that none of your competitors are doing, be a little bit more human and bring that human touch. Anyway, see if that question gets you anything out of your team. We also had a contribution from Darren, which flows actually beautifully now in this. Darren said that he felt that in 2026 we would see the collapse of the divide between experts and non-experts. That obviously is because everybody now has access to a sort of a primer and a next level intro to a topic. This is the first of our external contributors I'm going to disagree with slightly. I hear what Darren is saying. My nervousness is that it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect on steroids, that people who don't know what they don't know about a topic can think that they are experts because they read a ChatGPT generated summary of the topic. What I suspect, Darren, is more likely to happen is, yes, we're going to raise the base so that people can't bring their BS, because that's a lot of what happens. The experts bring a lot of BS to shut up the non-experts. They're not going to do that anymore. But I think what's actually going to emerge is a new type of business intelligence, or a new type of intelligence that we need in our systems, which is the person who stands between the expert and the non-expert. The person who knows we still need the 30 years of domain area expertise person in the room, but is then able to translate that expertise into something that is valuable for everybody else. So I don't think it's the collapse of expertise versus non-expertise, but it's a new form of sort of expert sherpering. I don't even know, there's a word for it, I'm sure. But that, I think, I don't know if that makes sense to you, Dean.
I like that term. Did you call it expert sherpering or expert sherpa or something?
Yes.
Something like that. Yeah. I think it's spot on. I think there has to be somebody who recognizes when all of this intelligence that is on display starts to hallucinate. And if you're not a genuine expert, if you don't understand, you're not going to recognize the hallucination. You're just going to go, oh, wow, that's brilliant, and don't I sound excellent? But that expert Sherpa or anti-hallucination expert is going to kind of catch those things out. I actually think that, in many ways, the rise of artificial intelligence is going to make people, you were talking about the the person who brings along the bullshit, it's going to, it potentially could lead to less of that. It's going to make humans raise their own game.
Yes, I think it will. I definitely think it will.
And that's a good thing. I think we will see productivity increase. And those people who don't look at how they can use AI to really enhance their own productivity and then brings an added value to the next level, to the next dimension, those are the people who are going to lose their jobs. Those are the people who AI will replace. But the people who learn to work with AI and enhance their own game and take that to a new level, their jobs are safe. They are safe.
Agreed. So with that, let me keep moving. My next one is that I think we are going to see a bursting of the AI bubble. Now, when I say this, a lot of people push back at me immediately and call me old and outdated. Please, no. I'm a technology junkie. I love this stuff. I try and keep ahead of the game. I even in 2025 produced my own digital twin. You can find it on my website. So don't mishear me. I'm not saying we shouldn't be using AI. I'm not saying AI is going to collapse in a heap, but the business financing model in the back end is very, very shaky. You've got the big 7 technology giant companies led by NVIDIA at the moment, and they are all lending and borrowing money from each other to buy and sell each other's products to each other. And they are creating multiple layers of these sort of circular financing tools. So if you look at things like CoreWeave and things like that, borrowing money from the same company they are buying GPUs from to sell GPU time to the companies that are financing the company that is debt financing, and like circles within circles. And I just think any reasonable analysis of the system says that sooner rather than later, and here I will put my head on the block here, Dean, I think you probably have a slightly different view. Personally, this isn't the company view, this is Graeme's view. I think within 2026, we will see a significant chink when one of those big companies, my guess would be it's NVIDIA, has a significant financial disclosure that is on the downside, and it spooks the market. Now, the good news is that probably won't crash the whole system. This isn't going to be like an Enron or a financial collapse like 2008, because it's sort of contained within these 7 companies. But if you own shares in those companies and you are hoping that will make you a fortune in 2026, good luck with that, I suppose. This is not financial advice and we are not giving you investment insights, but that is my view, to look out for the AI crash. And if you need to then have a business plan that hedges against that, both on the up and downside, just make sure you've got that in your calculations for 2026. The third one I want to throw into the mix, and we also can credit Nazreen here, one of our listeners, who wrote in and talked about new global alliances and the world beyond a world dominated by the USA. I don't know if it's the BRICS plus sort of stepping up to the next level, or if it's just the chaos that the Trump administration has put in place through 2025. And that chaos comes from just ripping up friendships, trash talking people, whether it is, say, blocking South Africa from coming to the G20 in America, or whether it's tariffs that you put on Canada and Mexico, or whether probably the most significant thing the Trump administration did was the new national security policy that was released in early December, just a month or so ago, that basically just ripped up 80 years of global relationships, with America saying, we just don't care. We don't care about China. We don't care about India. Officially, we very much care about the Americas and Central America and the Pacific and the Atlantic, and everybody else must just sort themselves out. How that plays out in 2026 is anybody's guess. Some countries are going to suck up to Trump and take him gold-plated fake peace prizes and all sorts of things. Other countries are going to just ignore him and hope that he ignores them. And other countries are going to stand up to him and are going to push back, and I'm going to see what happens when they do. And countries like Venezuela and probably South Africa and Ireland and a few others are not going to have a choice. They're going to have to decide how they engage with America, whose literal guns are turned in their direction. So all of that adds up to our grey elephant of multipolarity, which we've been talking about for a while, but I think everybody's beginning to understand, Dean, what we've been talking about. I mean, you were the one who spotted this a good 10 years ago, and sort of saw what Russia in particular was aiming to do to destabilize the global situation. I think we've got here a lot faster than I thought we would, but this is kind of where you've seen we've been getting to. Now almost anything is possible, and I think 2026 is going to be fascinating to see new alliances and new global relationships form.
Yeah, I touched on this earlier, Graeme, about how these grey elephants are coming to life. So we identified over 10 years ago that multipolarity was a weak signal. If you go into the history of it, it started 20 years ago with Evgeny Primakov saying that he wanted a system that could compete against the West, and he called it multipolarity. He named it. He put the strategy out there, and you can see exactly what Putin has been doing. It's just been delivering Primakov's strategy of multipolarity. So it's fascinating now to see it really starting to play out, and actually, in many ways, the opportunity I think has passed for a lot of countries who are suddenly, and companies who are now suddenly starting to say, wow, there's this multipolarity thing happening. That opportunity is rapidly flying past if it hasn't already. They might just be able to grab onto the coattails of this opportunity as it flies past. But it's a reality, it's happening, and it's been ignored. And I think to the West's peril. It is going to change. The world of multipolar powers is going to change everything. And 2026, I think, is the year that we're going to see multipolarity really build on the foundations of the last 2 decades.
I think this is probably a theme we'll be picking up again, maybe in even the next episode, Dean, because I think there's so much we need to be talking about, needing to help our clients think through around what does it look like to not just at an arm's length, sort of with your head, realize that global alliances are being rewritten. But this impacts deep in people's psyche, because you might now need to be saying, just give you an example of what I mean by this. There are people who will write you off if you do work in China or Saudi Arabia. Let me just use 2 examples. On the basis of the fact that China and Saudi Arabia, as far as these people would label them, are human rights abusers. Well, then you say, okay, fine. I'm not going to debate you on that. You must have a view of the world, and you must make your choices about who you engage with on that basis. But if that is your basis, then you have to use the same basis to analyze the UK, France, Germany, and especially these days, the United States of America. If you're using one label for China and Saudi Arabia, then by the same criteria, that same label applies. So if I'm not allowed, according to you, to do work in Saudi Arabia, then I shouldn't be allowed to do work in the United States. So there's a massive realignment of people's worldviews here. I think this is maybe one of the grey elephants that requires the biggest shift in people's worldviews. And we'll come back to this for sure.
Yeah, and it touches in on societal fractures, doesn't it? Because the rules for engagement are changing. Who are going to be the winners in the future within this new world as this new system of multipolarity plays out? And I think it was a week ago I wrote a post in LinkedIn about the probability of Russia and the US becoming allies. In this new multipolar world, who's to say that alliances couldn't completely turn on their head? Can you imagine? I think, as a leader, you should be thinking about what would happen to your supply chains, what would happen to your business if that alliance was formed, perhaps against the EU, against Europe. What would that mean for your business? So, play out that scenario. It doesn't, and think about how you would respond in that new world. And it's great to have that strategy in your back pocket. If it doesn't happen, great. But if it does happen, you're prepared, you're ready, and you can move ahead before your competitors who are now just trying to think through the implications of it. You're ahead of the game. So that's where these highly probable, high impact forces of change, they're in clear daylight, but they're ignored.
Yeah.
And these are the ones that are driving the change. Have a look at them.
Absolutely.
Think about a different world, and plot and navigate. Think about how you would navigate through that new world.
Perfect. And while we're reminding you to keep that opportunity mindset alive, I'm going to end just with a very positive one. Some of what we've talked about in these minutes together in this first episode of 2026 might have left people a little bit feeling downbeat about the future. There are some quite significant changes that could bring real threats and difficulties. But in the midst of all of that, there is also the application of science and technology and community and society effort into some really remarkable things. And final point from me today is that I do really genuinely think that we are going to see one or two absolutely astounding medical breakthroughs in 2026. If I could take a guess, I would guess that it would be cancer vaccinations would be the headline. So let's put a pin in this one, Dean. We're going to come back in 12 months' time and see how well we did. But I think there will be a list. I think at the end of 2026, we'll have a list of 3, 4, 5 things where we think, good grief, that's amazing. And on that list somewhere is going to be cancer vaccines for sure. Amongst other things, let's see what else the medical industry can bring to us this year.
The big one will be weight loss drugs. I think 2026 will be the year that weight loss drugs becomes democratized. Yeah, it's a little pill you pop. There's a new...
I think it's a human right, Dean. Everybody has the right to have GLP-1. Who knows?
Yeah, no, it'll have huge implications. Anyway, great conversation. Thanks, Graeme. I've really enjoyed this one. I think the grey elephants are stirring. There are a number of them that are actually very close to stampeding, if not stampeding already. And there are new ones emerging. It's going to be a fun year.
As always, if you would like any of our team, Dean, myself, or any of the other experts on the Tomorrow Today consulting team to have a chat with you, maybe take this conversation further, maybe customize it for you and your industry, or maybe just help you to shift from having a more nervous threat orientation to having that opportunity and growth mindset, just make sure you connect with us. All of our details are in the show notes. Links to some of what we talked about today, further reading, are also available in the show notes. Make sure that you check those out. And also, if you have any requests or insights that you'd like us to take into account for future episodes, drop us a note. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, all the best for 2026, for your thinking, your planning about what the future holds for us. And we'll chat to you again next month as we go into the future and look at some of the implications of what will become obvious in the year ahead. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great 2026.